beauty, right? What do paintings portray? Go to a movie, a great movie, and tell me that doesn't impact culture. Listen to music and tell me that doesn't impact culture, or a great speech or a performance or a musical composition or a great painting. Art matters. It is relevant. And it's important that we address that side of things too, because it's how we communicate. Kipp, what's up, man? Good to see you. Both of us are, it seems to be a reoccurring trend. I wonder if we should just switch the days that we record, because both of us are like, I'm busy today. And I could tell you got on. You didn't sound grumpy, but I could tell it's like, oh, he's in the zone.
Yeah,
I am too.
Yeah. I was in it from last week.
I think Monday's probably a bad day to do this.
Possibly.
Maybe we should switch to Tuesday.
Although, full disclosure, on Friday we have our all hands calls on in the Iron Council on Fridays, and the Friday call I was in a bad mood. I was just pissy, and it was funny. I hopped on the call, and guys were like, "Hey, how's it going, Kipp?" And I said, "Good."
Shut up.
And then I paused and I went, "No, actually, no, it's not good." Like, full disclosure, I'm having a rough day, right? I'm a little upset, a little pissy about some things. My bad, right? I'll keep it in check, but I'm lying if I'm saying everything's fine. Now, the irony is by the end of the call, guys were sending me private messages saying, dude, that was probably one of the more powerful calls I've ever been on. So maybe you need to be more pissed off on Fridays, but I don't know.
It's a little true. Wayne McPherson, he says, pissed off Ryan is a good Ryan. He likes when I'm a little fired up, and he often makes that statement. Honestly, I think when you're fired up a little bit, as long as you can rein it in, it seems like you're more willing to tell the truth and say some things that need to be said. I think the last time I was really that fired up was, it was on one of our calls for new Iron Council members. And I was the same way. I'm like, guys, look, I'm a little bugged today. We're going to get through it. And guys were making excuses. I'm like, just stop, and I called him out there on the spot because I just wasn't in the mood to deal with crap. And everybody was like, that was actually a really good call. And we all understand. We're all men. We all know we have bad days. And in the right context, I think it's better just to be upfront and honest about it. You're not getting it for validation. You're not getting it so people will, make you feel better and give you pats on the back and attaboy and you're okay. In fact, on days like that, I don't even want that. Don't text me. Don't message me. Don't talk to me. I don't need any of that. I'm just telling you, it's not going to be the same as it normally is.
Yeah. If anything, those things kind of piss me off some more, right?
Totally. Well, I know it's funny, sometimes I might be upset about something and, people might know or whatever it might be. And they call me and I'm like, yeah, that's just making me more bothered. I've got things to do. And you texting me and asking me if things are okay and do I want to talk about it? No, I don't. I want to work. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Right, exactly.
I love it, man.
They're just trying to be helpful, but we've all been there. So anyways. Well, do we have a headline for today?
Yeah, I do. I have one. And it was a study I heard about. And the study was actually called, if you guys want to reference this online, it's called Party Over Policy. And in the study, they had sampled questions, and the questions were kind of categorized into conservative viewpoints and more liberal viewpoints. And not surprising, people that were conservative kind of chose the conservative viewpoints, right, over the liberal ones.
Sure.
And then the second part of the study was they switched them and said, hey, these conservative viewpoints are actually promoted by liberal members of Congress and Senate, and and kind of put backing that did a switch. And what would you guess? Most of the people changed their stance.
Of course, right.
And their conservative viewpoints were now, not conservative, right? Because they believed that it aligned with the party, and they changed their opinion in the party. Now that's and I think we all know there's tribalization and groupthink and, a number of things that kind of go into that. But here's the crazy part. Then they surveyed them around why did they switch and telling them that they switched up the questions on them. And 86% of the people denied the fact that they switched their questions up based upon
Oh,
party.
really?
Yeah.
They didn't even know.
They didn't even want to accept it. Oh, no, I didn't do that. That's how stern people are in their ways of thinking, or or how much, I should say it this way, how much we tie our identities to political groups. We are so tied our identities to these political groups that we are unwilling to even consider the fact that we are being swayed to choose one thing or the other. That's how it blows my mind, how the lack of self-awareness to even admit that might actually even be occurring. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Even at a more silly level, if you don't think this is true, just go talk to somebody about the Super Bowl coming up.
Yeah.
Like, there are grown men who wear other men's jerseys with other men's names on their back, and they will get into fights to defend their, quote unquote, their team, as if they really had anything to do with it, and as if those athletes and those owners care anything about those lives. And look, I'll tell you, if you enjoy a football game, a sports outing or whatever, by all means, enjoy it. Have some fun. I love sports. I love competition. I love the discipline and all the virtues that go behind incredible athletes. But at the end of the day, it has no relevancy in my life whatsoever. But it is amazing to see how tribal men will get over the green colored team or the red colored team. It's absolutely ridiculous. It truly is.
It's crazy. What do you got?
I don't really have a headline, but I think the big thing right now is the tariffs. Everybody's kind of losing their mind, and Trudeau, the child, thinks he's going to go toe to toe with not only President Trump, but the largest economy in the world, and thinks he has a fighting chance. The fact of the matter is, and I don't say this with any arrogance, or maybe a little arrogance, slight arrogance, we don't need Canada as much as Canada needs us. And I'm talking about the economies. A lot of people seem to believe that the tariffs is a tax on American consumers. And I can see why they would think that. Yeah. Prices naturally will go up. But I think a couple of things that stood out to me, one woman this morning said, well, prices are already high and now I can't get gas because it'll cost me $100 to fill up my tank. I'm like, $100 to fill up your tank? What kind of car are you driving? Because it's been 30 years since it was less than $100 for me to fill up my tank. So that was my first question. I'm like, I need to figure out what she's driving. Yeah, I guess I drive a truck, so that's maybe why. But she said that inflation's going to go so high, and are we happy? Are MAGAs happy yet? I'm like, this is the problem with American just politics in general, and the citizens of America, and probably worldwide. We have such an inability to focus on any sort of long-term results that would require any sort of short-term sacrifice today. Yes, prices are likely to go up. And what she had said, or he said, I can't remember, is that how is this going to benefit Americans? Well, in a couple of ways. Number one, it's going to bring back American manufacturing. Because if I can go to Canada or Mexico or China or India or wherever else and make products cheaper, then of course, as an organization, you're going to do that. But if it's the same price, or same cost rather, if I build here in America or build overseas, of course, obviously, you're going to start building here, which puts Americans back to work, which boosts our economy. It's all relative. So that's part of it. The other part of it, and this is what most people overlook with tariffs, President Trump uses tariffs as a bargaining tool. He's not trying to screw Americans, and this is what so many people get wrong. It's just a leveraging tool. And guess what? This morning, Mexico's president, who said that she was going to stand up and fight, backed down already, and she agreed, based on some things that President Trump and her have said, to deploy 10,000 Mexican troops to the border in order to stop and halt or slow down some of the illegal crossings related to drug trafficking. And in exchange, President Trump agreed to pause all tariffs for the next 30 days. It's a bargaining tool. People don't understand. And here's the thing that you need to know about this. Kipp, let's say you and I got into an altercation at a sports event, since we were talking about that earlier. And we were both probably drunk and belligerent and acting stupid towards each other. And you said something to me and I said something to you, but you didn't perceive me as a threat. You would you'd be more willing or more likely to escalate the situation if you did not perceive me as a threat, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
If, on the other hand, you actually thought that I could back up what I was saying, that would be a deterrent to you. If I saw you, because I know you have a little bit of cauliflower ear, that's a deterrent to me, because I think, well, this guy obviously spends time on the mats, and so I better be aware of who I'm getting into it with. That's a deterrent. You have to be able to threaten people or countries in this case.
Leverage.
But actually have the weight behind it.
Yeah.
Because if it's just empty rhetoric, nobody cares. And that's why everybody walked all over the United States and Joe Biden, because sometimes he talked a big game by saying, listen, pal, and listen up, bub, and this kind of stuff like an old grandpa would. And at the end of the day, people could just walk right over him, and they knew they could. Trump has to show his hand occasionally. Canada will back down. I promise you. They will back down. Mexico has already backed down. Colombia, 2 weeks ago, backed down. These are just leveraging plays. Wake up, exercise a little discernment, exercise a little critical thinking, even if it's not your party of choice. I get that. And think long term. And if you won't do it for yourself, consider it for your kids and consider it for your grandkids, because that's what we're saddling with if we don't take care of it now and sacrifice now. And I could get onto a whole other soapbox about Medicare and Social Security, which is another conversation for another day. But that is a very, very serious conversation that needs to start being had.
Do you even think that it will make that big of a difference from internal costs? Like, I actually don't think it will. I think it might for a short period of time, but I don't even think it's a long haul here. I think that maybe costs will go up a little bit and it will be minimal. But
I think what we'll probably see is artificially inflated prices with the stock market and companies anticipating increasing costs.
Yeah.
And so it's not. As a former financial advisor, that is something a lot of people don't understand, is the way that the market works, and how sensitive it is to all sorts of information. That's why when people say, well, I have this stock pick and it's underpriced. It's not underpriced. You're not smarter than 300 million people or the 8 billion people on the planet, and you're certainly not smarter than the people who are selecting prices and manipulating prices, and the Federal Reserve and all the bureaucracy and red tape that's going on behind this to, I think, manufacture certain crises and inflation and things like, inflation, obviously, that's proven that it's manufactured. But you're never getting a good deal. If you think you're getting a good deal on a stock, that deal, quote unquote deal, has already been priced into the value of the stock. And most people don't know that. And that's why most people lose their shirt when they decide to pick stocks and instead of just investing in long-term, low-cost, low-turnover mutual funds.
Yeah, totally. Good stuff, man. Well,
okay.
Iron Council, we're going to answer some questions from those guys. To learn more about the Iron Council, our exclusive brotherhood, you can go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Robbie Leffel, can I follow up my question from last week, he asks. And thanks for answering it. When you built your boat, did that project ground you more in your masculinity? And should we try to find projects like that since we are no longer full-time hunters and gatherers, assuming everything else is aligned?
Yeah, so if you aren't familiar, last week he said, should we pursue masculine hobbies over what generally would be considered non-masculine? I'm paraphrasing. It was something along those lines. Again, I think the answer is the same. You know, going back to building my boat, for example, which is not complete. I want to put that out there because I have a couple of friends who bust my balls every time I bring up the canoe. So I'm just putting it out there right now. Okay, it's not.
Yeah.
But
own it.
I'll leave it there for now. I don't know that was more masculine than planting a garden necessarily. I mean, it was more, you could make the case, and I think this is the case a lot of people would make, is that it should be, a hobby should be engaged in something of utility. So for example, rebuilding an engine motor, for example, is better than painting a picture. Because rebuilding the engine, there's more utility in rebuilding the engine than painting a picture and putting it on your wall. I think even if they aren't acknowledging it, that's the case people are making. And while I can certainly agree, you said in your last little caveat there, if all of your other bases are covered or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Didn't he say something like that?
Yep, totally. Yep, he did say that.
Yeah. So if you don't have a car, then I would probably get a car before I'd paint a picture. But if you already have the car, well, then you're fine. You paint your picture, take your pictures, create, build. I really don't see a difference between the two. I think I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the question of like, why does it matter? If you find value in building or gardening or painting, if everything else is covered, I don't really think it matters.
Totally. Well, Ryan, maybe we take something out of Jack Donovan's playbook, right? And you could probably speak to it a little bit better than I have, or I can. But you know, his whole thought around masculinity being in the arts and the drawback of men saying, oh, well, that's not a masculine hobby or activity, so I'm not going to participate in those, and the impact that has on society. I mean, one could argue that...
I mean, it's a huge...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I want you to explain it, because I think Jack makes a really good point from that perspective.
Well, I'll give you an example in politics, just men in general. You know, I think the common mantra, and Jack is somebody who understands this well. Another person who understands this well is Tanner Guzzi with Masculine Style. And what Tanner often mocks when he hears most men speak about style, for example, is real men don't care about how they look. And he's saying it sarcastically, but that's the belief a lot of men have. Real men don't care about what they look like. Well, that is the furthest thing from the truth. You know, take some of the manliest men. We talked about George Washington 3 or 4 weeks ago. He was very, very wrapped up in his appearance and what it signified and what it meant and what message it was conveying. When I got up this morning, I put clothes on that spoke to me and conveyed a message to other people. I mean, look at my hat. It literally has a thing, an emblem on it, because I want people to see that. Same thing with my shirt. Iron sharpens iron. The scriptural reference with the why am I drawing the anvil? You know, and so it's like this is saying something. Whatever you're wearing right now, Kipp, is saying something. You wore that for a reason. It wasn't just you. It's to articulate how you feel. And I think you ought to be mindful of that. And so the example that I kind of got a chuckle, but also was a little bit repulsed by, was at Trump's inauguration, or at least his inaugurational speech. Somebody like John Fetterman came in wearing basketball shorts and a hoodie and gym shoes. He looks like Adam Sandler, like a big oafy Adam Sandler at the presidential inaugurational address. Now tell me, do you think more of him or less of him? If you've never seen him, you know nothing about him, more or less. Of course, anybody who's being honest thinks less of that person because of the way that they are presenting themselves. The way that we look matters, and it has the power to impact culture. Now, how does that relate to the arts? Beauty, right? What do paintings portray? Go to a movie, a great movie, and tell me that doesn't impact culture. Listen to music and tell me that doesn't impact culture. Or a great speech or a performance or a musical composition or a great painting. One of the greatest, most famous paintings in the world, the Mona Lisa, is Leonardo da Vinci, is one of the most influential pieces of art of all time. Art matters. It is relevant. And it's important that we address that side of things too, because it's how we communicate. Even a beautiful story. A man sits down with his son side by side and tells a very well-crafted, clever story or anecdote about lessons he learned as a boy. And now that translates to his son, and hopefully his son or his daughter internalizes that and now is a better human being because dad learned how to tell a good story. That's art. Art is so relevant when it comes to culture. And that's what we're doing here. This is artistic in a lot of ways. We're expressing our ideas and thoughts, and we're deliberate about the way that we're doing it, from our audio and video to the music that we use to the lighting that is implemented. It's all crucial.
Yeah. Thanks. Peter Bentoncourt, have either of you served on a board? If so, what type was it? And did you gain from the time spent on the board? I'm considering volunteering or at least looking into that so I could expand my professional network, develop strategic decision-making skills, and gain exposure to high-level leadership. Any suggestions or experience would be great.
I don't have any experience on boards. I'd like to give my thoughts about it, but I want to hear, do you have any experience on sitting on boards?
No, actually. And in fact, I love this question because I've been approached actually over the last 6 months about possibly being on a board. It's intriguing. My key thing is like, is it a proper investment of my time, right? And am I going to get enough out of it that based upon the time I'd put into it? So I'd love to hear your thoughts about it for sure.
I can still hear you, Kipp. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You froze for a second.
Okay. Yeah. The last thing I heard you say is it a proper use of my time? I think is what I heard you say.
Yeah. And really love to hear your thoughts about it. I have some opinions, but no, I have not actually served on a board. I've worked with a board for actually probably about a year and a half, a board of advisors, but that's it. Yeah. We're having connection issues.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's okay. We can work through it. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts about a board?
There we go. Well, I've never served on a board either. So that I can remember anyways. And for me, I have a general level of disdain towards that type of structure. And I'm not saying it isn't needed. It certainly is, but I don't know if it's my natural inclination to buck authority, but anytime a board gets together, it just seems like it's a bunch of hall monitors from when you were a kid who are making bad decisions on behalf of everybody else. I just have this just disdain. I've thought about getting into politics and school board and things like this, and I'm like, do I want to deal with other people that I don't like? The kind of people that want to be in power are the kind of people I don't want to spend any amount of time with. So I realize the importance of having a board. And, if you're representing an organization of thousands and thousands of individuals, then there has to be a handful of people making some of those decisions. Sure. For me, my personality is I'd rather be boots on ground doing the work. I feel like I can make a bigger difference doing work than I can making decisions. I think most of the time, these boards are so far connected from reality. A lot of the times, people who serve on these types of boards have no experience whatsoever in the field in which they're making decisions. And I would rather just work. I'd rather make a difference by serving people, by being engaged in something that's meaningful. And Peter, look, I know that's really negative towards what you want to do. I get it. And if you do, then hopefully you'll be the kind of guy who isn't like that, who's not looking for power, who's not looking for authority over other people, but wants to build influence and wants to serve and actually cares about people, and you actually care about your mission, and you're getting involved in things that you have some credibility and know-how in, and you're not just winging it or doing it for the notoriety or accolades that say, I sit on this board of directors for this nonprofit or whatever it might be. So those are my 2 cents.
I love it. Now, and you bring up some really good points. I mean, you could even pull someone from industry and they might have strong opinions around something should be done, but what was their success rooted in? EBITDA scores, an exit strategy? Did people hate working for them? Oh, hold on. Maybe I shouldn't be listening to your opinion then, right? Like,
right.
So be careful. And what are you asking a board to do? To provide insights. And if they're not close enough to it, just like Ryan's saying, their insights are rooted in what?
Ignorance.
A bunch of assumptions? Are you joking? Right? Like that's leadership principle number 1. Don't assume anything. And then you inject a higher level that is based in a lot of questions, all based upon assumption. And then they have your ear. Right? Be very careful. And some of it is based upon what you ask of a board. And I love how you flip that, Ryan. Is like, Peter, if you're going to be on a board, don't be that type of board member then. Be the one that focuses on coaching the leaders of the organization on what they need to be doing to show up more powerfully for their people. Right?
Well, I think
and watch that ego.
Right. Well, and I think there's also this desire for a lot of these members to, they love the sound of their own voice, and they love to pontificate, and they love to sound smart. Yeah. And I'm going to steal a page from your playbook. You often say this, Kipp. What problem are we trying to fix? And I think in a lot of situations, when you get these bloated organizations, and we've done this in the Iron Council, and you're like, hold on. There's no problem. What are we doing here? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Or what is the problem? And we don't even know what the problem is. We can't articulate it.
We're just
doing shit. Right. And again, to go back to my previous financial advisory days, meddling doesn't work. Meddling never works. Pick a strategy, do it for a long period of time, evaluate it with actual data and objective reality. And then if something needs to be fixed, then go ahead. So Peter, again, another recommendation, because you did ask for recommendations and I'm giving it to you from a very pessimistic perspective, is don't be the guy that just creates a bunch of bullshit for everybody else to do that actually doesn't move the needle. You might actually be the guy who says, hold on, board. Like, we're talking about all these things. We don't have the budget, or we don't have the time, or that's not really a problem. Let's prioritize. We've got 10 things everybody here wants to do, and everybody on the board each has their own initiative that thinks that is the most important. Why don't we spend a little time voting today on what is the most important that we're going to focus on this quarter? And we won't ignore everything else, but it's not as big of a priority as priority number 1, which is what we all agree on.
Yeah,
I think you could bring some rationality to the conversation if you took that perspective.
Totally. Let me add one more thing for him.
And then I'll add one more thing, because we want to keep talking about this, just like boards, like
the board. Yeah,
exactly.
If they're not seeking your counsel, you're doing the board thing wrong. Like if they bring things to the table because the board is asking for it, now you're just another cog in the process, right? You're creating busy work for people, right? But if they're seeking out your counsel, like, oh, I would love to get your thoughts and opinions around this, Peter, and whatever, like they need to be seeking you. Otherwise, you're not an effective board member. And I'd use that as a pulse.
That's a good point. You know what's interesting, Kipp, about this is we have a board for the Iron Council. And And I hope that I actually turn to you guys for advice. One of the first things we do every conversation we have is who has announcements in their specific lane, because I can't manage it all. And there's people who are better at things than me and other people, and people who have weaknesses and people who have strengths. And so, it is funny we're talking about it this way, but we have a board. So
yeah, we kind of do. Yeah.
It's not even kind of, you guys are a board of advisors for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So something to consider as well. Maybe everybody who sits on the board is like, what the hell's Ryan? What's Ryan's deal? I thought he liked doing this. All right. What's next?
Joe Gunter. I have been on a battle team for a while now. I feel like I'm drifting. Can you guys share some of your best and worst experiences in being on a battle team? If you were to structure a battle team again, what would you do to improve?
Yeah, well, the best thing about a battle team is that you all get really close and you start to know your strengths and weaknesses. And then the worst thing about a battle team is kind of the same thing. You get so close and you become such good friends that you can no longer hold each other accountable at a high level. And that's the problem. That's what happens. When you become too friendly, you no longer have the ability to hold each other accountable. Another thing that happens is, Kipp, I begin to see all of your deficiencies in addition to mine. And then I start thinking even subconsciously, who are you to tell me that I'm not doing a good job?
Yeah, because I know about your shit. That's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good in a lot of ways, but over time it can be a real problem. And then there's complacency that slips in, and there's boredom that slips in because it's monotonous and it's always the same. So, Joe, what I would encourage you to do immediately, go to another battle team immediately. That is the next step. Go sit on 2, 3, 4 other battle teams. Maybe there's some battle team leaders or guys in the Iron Council that you've been inspired or motivated by. Go sit on one of their teams. And by the way, this applies whether you're in the Iron Council or not. Let's say you're part of another mastermind group, or you're part of a coaching organization. Mix it up every once in a while. Give it long enough that you can actually produce results. I often think of people who go to the gym and they do something for a week and they're like, it's not working. It's like, well, you spent 10 years on the couch. Give it a second. Like, it might take a little longer than 10 days to see the results that you're after. So give it long enough that it can actually produce results for you, but don't give it so long that it becomes stagnant and complacent and familiar, because that's just not doing you any favors. So what I would say about building a battle team, and we've actually discussed this as a board, is encouraging, if not making it a mandatory obligation, for men to switch teams every so often. I don't know what that number is, and we're not doing that right now. But it's something we've just discussed for exactly the reasons that we're talking about right now. But you don't need to wait till and if that happens. Go find a new team today.
Yeah. And Joe, there might be, maybe before the team switch, make sure, right? Like, am I drifting because I've lowered my standards? I'm being complacent, right? Maybe the team's still killing it and you haven't. When I remember years ago, I was on Echo and we were having a team call, and I remember getting off a call one night. I remember this night because it was profound for me. And I remember thinking that was a superficial BS meeting. No one was dressing big, important things. No one was authentic. Everyone's skirting around hypothetical conversation about, what could be a problem. No one was talking about problems. And I'm like, oh my God, we're just talking heads, all listening to each other talk, feel good about ourselves, and hanging up a phone call. And I remember thinking, like, that's not what I want. And I remember, at the time I was reading Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko and Leif. And you mentioned one of the dichotomies literally at the front of this question in regards to our response. And I was like, lead from the front. So the next call, I joined the call. I'm like, guys, I need to clear something up. I'm playing small. I'm not sharing what I should be sharing on this call. I'm not really struggling, or I'm not really sharing my struggles. I'm not seeking your guys' advice because I'm hopping on this call thinking I should have my shit together and I don't want to look bad in front of you guys. And because of that, I'm playing smaller than I should be. And I'm not going to do it anymore. And my commitment is to be raw and real with you guys. And my ask is that you do it with me. That was a major change in that team. But it required me to do something about it. So be careful, Joe, that you're not walking away from the team because the team's not doing what you wish they would do. Maybe you're the one that needs to say something. Maybe you're the one that needs to lead from the front.
I mean, I'm glad you said that is a classic Kipp answer of, hey, fix it where you are, right? I'm not even saying that as a joke. Like, I'm saying that is classic Kipp. Fix it where you are, do what you can, and then you can evaluate. So I'm glad you took it that way. And you talked about making sure that you were changing, that you were looking for it, and you also alluded to this. You owe it to the team to communicate with them. And I didn't say that because that didn't really cross my mind until you started talking. But you owe it to your team leader who is trying to serve you. And you owe it to your team members to say, hey, guys, like maybe I'm not doing it all I can do, but also I've noticed we're starting as a team to become complacent. We are not holding each other. We are not talking. We are not communicating. We are not doing our battle plans. I'm going to commit to do my part, but this is a problem for me. And I'm not bailing. I don't want to bail. I want to be here and stay here with you guys. This needs to change. So what can we do? So I like that you're talking about leading from the front, leading yourself, and then also communicating with the team. It's the same thing with a relationship, a romantic relationship, for example. One partner decides they're not getting what they want. They start distancing themselves mentally, emotionally, physically even. No, screw that. You owe that person because you committed. You owe that person, even though it's really uncomfortable in some cases, a conversation. Hey, look, we're not doing good. We've been drifting, or I'm not happy. And here's why I'm not happy. And here's what I would need to be happy. And I know you're not happy. And what can I do to make you happy? Those are conversations that you are obligated to have because you committed to doing that. And then through years of working through that and talking and communicating and trying, then and only then should we consider, is this what we should be doing? But you cannot consider that until you've been honest with the person and upfront and given them an opportunity to participate in the change that you'd like to see. Because I think you'd be surprised. They probably would actually like to be engaged in that with you.
Totally. Elijah Elliott, what are your top 3 recommended skills to acquire and develop as a man, and why? And what are some tips on how to develop and master them? Top 3 recommended skills to acquire and develop as a man.
I'm writing these down. Right yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lot more. I'm trying to whittle it down. Okay, so I have 3. Number 1 is, I'd say, and these aren't in any order, but number 1 is the ability to communicate effectively. A man's ability to articulate a message, a thought, an idea, cast vision, enlist other people, motivate, inspire, push, pull, drag, do whatever you need to do. Your ability to use your words is, especially in this day and age, more important, I think, than it's ever been. We are communicators. We are networkers by nature. We are in relationships, all kinds of different relationships. And there is not a single opportunity or a single responsibility that a man has that doesn't require him to excel in his ability to communicate clearly and effectively. And communication is different, whether it's on this podcast. Kipp, if you and I are having a conversation in person, the way that you and I communicate is going to go different than the way we're doing it right now, right? Yeah. Or if we were presenting to a stage of 1,000 or 10,000 people, I'm going to communicate what I'm sharing now different. So your ability to communicate in all environments you find yourself in is crucial. So that's number 1. Again, not in any order. Number 2, I would say, is self-defense. You need to be strong. You need to be able to be aware of your surroundings. This is a lot of skill sets kind of balled into one. You need to be physically capable. You need to know how to handle a firearm. You need to carry a firearm and or a knife, depending on your situation and where you live. You need to be able to use your body as a weapon, throw a punch, take somebody down, defend yourself, strangle somebody, break an arm, like whatever you need to do, you need to know how to do that and work on becoming more proficient in self-defense. And I think even primary to that is keeping you and your family out of those situations. Prime example, and all men I think know this, and I don't know if it's inherent, but I've never heard a man not know this. My son and I, it was my second son and I went to lunch. I take one of my children to lunch each week. So I took my second son to lunch last week, and we sat down in the restaurant, and he sat down in my seat. And I said, "Hey, bud, switch me spots." And he's like, "Okay." And he said, "Why did you want to switch spots?" And I explained to him why it's important that my back is against the wall so I can see everything. Now, he may not fully grasp or understand that, but that's a little thing that every man should do to keep himself and his family and his people safe. You need to be able to see the entire field. And then the third component is, I just call it usefulness. Know how to do shit. If the plumbing goes out, like the toilet breaks, you should know how to fix the toilet. Basic electrical, being just handy, having tools, knowing how to change the oil or change a tire on your truck, like being useful. If like hanging a picture on the wall straight and level, can you even do that? Like all these little things around the house, with your vehicle, at the office, you want to be the guy that's like, that's capable. I remember I was at a football game, I think it was last year, and I'm just sitting there on the bleacher. It was actually lacrosse. I was sitting there on the bleachers, and I was watching my oldest son play lacrosse and just enjoying the game. I really love the game, and I'm just sitting there just minding my business, and I hear a friend, his name's Dan, and he's 3 or 4 benches up, and his son's playing as well. He's like, "Hey, Ryan." And I turn around, and he's like, "Hey, do you have a knife?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I grabbed it out of my pocket and gave it to him. He's like, "I knew you would. I asked you because I knew you would have a knife." And that was the greatest compliment he could have paid me in that moment. Yeah. Because he knows that guy has the tools. He knows how to use them. And if anybody's got a knife on hand, it's him. And that should be you. So those are my 3.
I love it. I love it. We're getting close on time, so I kind of wanted to move on to a couple more, if that's okay.
Okay. Yep.
Brandon Clement. When you are an underdog and rise through smoke and ashes as a winner, how do you keep this momentum and not let up and give into the idea that you have made it?
Always be the underdog. Just aim higher. That's it. Like, let's say you got a promotion at work and you're on cloud 9 and you're so excited. There was 3 or 4 other people in the office vying for the position and you got it. Cool. What's next? Congratulations. Celebrate it. Honor it. Be excited about it. I'm not saying that. Be excited. You earned it. You deserve it. If you didn't, you wouldn't have it. So you can do that, but then you can also think, well, what's next? I want to be the best at this thing. If your goals end at your next goal, I mean, what is there? That's boring. Life's miserable. There's been things that I've wanted in life that I've looked back on now at 43 years old, and I'm like, man, I remember when I wanted to make $100,000 a year. That seems like so long ago. And then I remember when I wanted to make 7 figures. And that seems not all that long ago. And then I remember all of these little things that came up that I've had. And they didn't really mean all that much to me. And I'm not saying that's a good thing necessarily, but I'm always thinking about what is the next big thing? What motivates me next? And you know this because even when it comes to events, and you've said this, you're like, well, I kind of like that event. I'm like, we've already done that event. We've done it a dozen times.
You've already moved on.
What's next? It's a great event. You're not wrong. It's a great event. And it served a lot of people. I'm sure there's a lot of people who'd love to continue to do that. But what are we doing next? I just need to be excited. And maybe that's some ADD or something like that kicking in. But that's what keeps me motivated is I'm thinking about what's bigger, better, greater, grander, impacts more people, makes more money, serves more people. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, what I find interesting about this statistically, Brandon, as you get older, and I don't think it's age actually, I think it's success. But as people move up in their levels of success, they actually become less coachable. And they become less coachable because I've made it. I know my stuff. I have 20 years of experience doing this, right? And you start getting a little bit too much ego. And thus you're not rising. You're not an underdog. An underdog accepts that they're an underdog and goes, hey, I am the underdog, but I have the confidence to not be one anymore. But it is also in the space of dealing in the reality that you are the underdog, which is humility. So I like to couple those two things together. I think people can be humble and not progress. Oh, I don't know that. I don't know that. But you got to be confident enough that you can know it. So it's confident humility, constantly balancing, knowing that you're capable of progressing and learning and getting better, while also checking that you may not know how to get there yet, and keeping your ego in check.
The word "yet" is always the most important.
Just yet.
Like,
yeah.
I don't make, because a lot of guys will put a period at the end of the sentence.
I don't know that.
I don't make six figures, period. Okay? Like, and finish the sentence, yet. And so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Or I don't bench 350 pounds. Well, I know you're not strong enough yet. Like, isn't that the natural? Like, finish the sentence. Yet, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. But most people put a period halfway through the sentence. And that's the problem. Can I give a little small example about asking questions? Because I think asking questions is huge. So yesterday, it was a beautiful day in southern Utah. The kids were kind of restless in the morning. I'm like, let's get outside. So we went outside, we played basketball, we rode bikes, and the kids wanted to go down to the park, and Brecken my oldest, brought his lacrosse sticks. And he's like, let's play lacrosse. I'm like, cool. And I was fairly athletic. I wasn't like the biggest or most capable, but fairly athletic when I was younger. And so we're playing lacrosse, and that's harder than you'd think if you haven't done it much. It's really hard.
Super
it's
hard.
Actually,
I can't
it's actually a miracle.
I can't catch it.
Yeah, it's a miracle that a human being can catch that ball. It's a whole other conversation. Him and I were talking about the miracle of your eyeballs picking up light, detections of differences in light, and a ball traveling at 70 plus miles an hour, and you're not even catching it with your hand like a baseball. You've got this 6 foot or 9 foot pole or whatever it is. I think it's 3 and 6 feet pole, and you're grabbing it out of midair, and the net is just big enough that the ball fits just perfectly. It's a miracle of God's creation that you can even catch the thing, but we can. So I'm trying to do this, and I'm not doing very well. He's like, can I show you something? And my knee-jerk reaction, and I didn't say this, but inside I'm like,
what are you going to teach me?
Yeah, what? He's like, can I change something about your stance? And inside I'm like, okay, sure, sure, little boy, you can show me. And he comes over and he's like, here, try this. He's like, put your elbow at the end of the pole, and then the length from your elbow to your palm of your hand, that's where your other hand should be. He's like, your hands are either too far apart or too narrow together. I'm like, whatever. And so I did it at the distance he told me to. And the first throw, I was like, oh shit, that actually works. And we have to ask ourselves, even with our kids, like, how often are you willing to be the student? And we have a mutual friend. I don't know if I'll say who it is. It's Matt Jenkins. Matt Jenkins is a perpetual student. And this is not what I'm going to say next meant as a slight at all. It's not. It's a compliment. He is willing to look so foolish in order to learn. Have you noticed that about him?
Absolutely. He has no.
You know where he does it?
It's not an issue for him.
It's not an issue, which is why he knows so much. And you know where it really shines? Language.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen him speak a language that he doesn't really know, but he just does it with a person that speaks that language? And he sounds so dumb. And the other person's like looking at him weird, and he doesn't care. He does it anyways. And then actually what ends up happening is he wins over the person he's talking to. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
At first they're like, this is weird. But at the end they're excited and they're teaching him and he's absorbing. He's like, well, what about this? How do you say this? Or like, where do you put the inflection? I've seen him do it countless times. And I'm always so fascinated with his ability to do that and his total disregard for the way that he looks in the name of learning something new. It's incredible to me.
Yeah. That's spot on. It's exactly who he is. It's great.
Yeah. It's incredible. I love it. And you can't help but love everybody loves him because he's humble and he's eager to learn new things and do new things. And he's not dumb. He picks it up fast.
Yeah.
You know, he gets taught something. He's like, implements it immediately. Speed of action. I'm like, this guy is incredible.
Yeah. That's great. Do you have time for one more?
One more. Let's do one more.
Okay. Chris Henningsen, how do you deal with a divorce that has little hope of reconciliation after a failed attempt to reconcile, even when you don't want to give up? So I'm assuming deal with a divorce coming.
Pending divorce,
right.
yeah.
A pending divorce, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I've got a good friend. His name's Keith Yackey. He runs a program called The Marriage Game, or The Married Game. Marriage Game, Married Game. Sorry, Keith. I can't remember what it is right now, but Marriage Game or Married Game. I feel bad. I'll look it up.
Anyways,
Keith Yackey. Yeah, Keith Yackey.
Yeah.
And here's what he said to me as I was going through the prospect of a divorce. He said, Ryan, whether you reconcile or not, you only have one play. There is only one play, regardless of what you want, and that is to be the best man that you can be. And if there's any hope of reconciliation, then that play is the only thing that will work, is you getting in shape, you gaining new knowledge, you excelling in your career, you being present and engaged with her and your kids if that's the case. Everything you can do to make yourself into the best man possible. That is the only thing that you can do if this is going to work. And you have to do it for yourself. If you do it for her, it doesn't count. You have to do it for yourself. And conversely, if it doesn't work out and it's not going to work because it's too little too late or too far gone or whatever else it might be, the only play you have to have a better life moving forward is to be the best man that you possibly can be.
Yeah.
Get in shape, develop new skills, keep communicating with her in a respectful way, and obviously building a relationship with your kids, work on your career, work on your spirituality, get your financial house in order. So that actually should bring you a little bit of hope and encouragement, because there's no two different strategies depending on where you're at. There's only one strategy, and it will either work in that your marriage will be better, or it will work in that the marriage is too far gone and you're going to be a great catch for the next woman to come into your life. And if that's the case, I promise you, there are more women. Another woman will come into your life when you're ready, when it's ready, when you're good and ready. But if you want to speed up that process and live a more fulfilled, happy, engaged life pre or post divorce, you have one play. That's it. Do that.
Love it. It's a great way to wrap up. The Married Game.
Married Game. As soon as you started looking, I remember The Married Game. Check it out. It's a great resource. I've personally gone through it. And we have guys in the Iron Council who've gone through. In fact, he's in the Iron Council. Keith put together a course for members of the Iron Council. If you go over to the left sidebar and you look at courses, that his course will come up. It's free. It's available to you inside the Iron Council because you're a member.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen, for you guys' questions today. Guys from the IC, to learn more about the Iron Council, once again, that's orderofman.com/Iron Council. Maybe a call out around our AAR, After Action Review. That's a process that we follow within the IC. It's a free resource that you could get online, and that's orderofman.com/AAR. And then I think the key thing is we have a large event coming up in May 1st through the 4th. That's the Men's Forge. You can learn more about that event at themensforge.com.
That's right. Well, guys, great questions today. I really appreciate them all. We talked about the caliber and quality of questions just a couple of weeks ago, and it keeps rolling in like that. So very honored to be on the path. I mean, Kipp and I are on the path. You know, in some ways, maybe a little further ahead. In some ways, maybe a little further behind. We're all on different paths. But I'm learning. I'm not going to speak for you, Kipp, but I am learning just as much from you guys. From the questions that you're asking, from guys in the Iron Council, that I see their posts and I engage with them, that things I've never even thought of that I'm implementing in my life that is serving me too. So in a lot of ways, sometimes I feel selfish. I tell people often I'm the biggest beneficiary of the work that we're doing. So I am grateful for everybody. Totally. Anyways, guys, that's it. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.